Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of What If Civilization Started Over. In the last episode, we saw a few events happening, such as, well, actually, we really only saw one event, but the finish. We saw the finishing of World War II. Technically, the colonies were divided up in peace treaties. As you can see, some older nations are back, and we have some new faces on the globe as well. But we also saw the alliances doing power rankings, and in the episode before that we did the actual power rankings. But let's get straight into this video. All right, so we're gonna come up into Europe, and we are going to have the alliance later on. And you've probably quickly noticed that a lot of Europe there there are only two countries in Europe that are not part of an alliance currently. That well, technically one, but because they're not part of a military alliance, but they are part of an economic alliance. Whereas Iceland, they are really becoming the new Switzerland. Nobody really wants to invade them right now, and nobody needs to. And if anyone were to invade them, it's really like, why would you even do that? Like, it's honestly just a dumb idea. Iceland hasn't even had a border change since what? It was since the Dutch Empire collapsed, so it's been a long while. But we're gonna come down right to Germany. Um, uh, Something about Germany is, well, this is technically outdated, but I did just do a little quick update on them. They are in the red stability, which means they are on the verge of collapsing. These guys, none of them are in the dark red stability. None of them are in current collapse right now. However, God dang it. However, Germany now is. Parts in the central area of their nation begin to start rebelling away from them. And the central parts, well, go way back. This episode has them. Way back to here. I said here. Alright. And, yeah, the Dutch start revolting against the Germans. Way, way, way back, the Dutch once owned this area. And a lot of people from the Dutch team, they kind of just, a lot of people just didn't want to be part of Denmark, England, or North France. So they just kind of hopped on over to Germany. And something about the new Cross Alliance is they're gonna deactivate members that are in a revolution. These members could still try and get aid if another country begins to invade them. However, what we see happening in this case is actually the uh, we actually see the cross alliance member invade them because also way back a while ago the Danish owned a lot of this area, so they start invading into the Dutch team, which is really more of Germany now. I'm trying to get this a bit smaller. Alright, so we see the Danish invading in. They take over three major cities and push in from both the north and the east, or north and the west. However, we also do see this revolution begin up and spin into their colony as well down here. And then that allows them to push back the Danish all the way up to this river here. At least I think that's a river. I could be extremely dumb right now. But the Dutch will also begin a couple revolts, which leads into big revolts in England. And this will activate the Diamond Alliance, because something about the Diamond Alliance is if a country experiences revolts, they'll send aid, unlike pretty much prohibiting their member from getting aid. So we now see the Swiss country will also begin to join this war, and they really just they also invade into they also invade into Germany. But since a cross alliance member is also invading into Germany, no countries are really gonna send aid up to them. However, countries that will send aid through them are the members of the Diamond Alliance. We see Sweden makes a landing down here. They also kind of fight with the revels, revolts too. We see Kaliningrad, one of the oldest nations in the world, or older nations in the world that hasn't disappeared. Of course, there are many others older than them, which actually I think is just these six over here, and the Danish, which actually really surprises me now thinking about that. The oldest country that's been in the world for this whole series is what I think it's Ethiopia, and then it'd be North or the Great Lakes Empire, and then Korea. So I am counting this as the Swiss did this since the Swiss disappeared. But we see all these nations coming back in here to get their land back. Or some of them get land back, some of them get their own land. But eventually, the groups in the Dutch team, they're kind of split. Some of them are like, oh, we should just be revolting in the Dutch area. This is where we came from. This is our home. This is where we lived. While others are like, well, yeah, but history stuff. Like, this was our this was our home at one point. So some of the groups continue to go into Germany, and some of them just kind of focus on defending this area as countries definitely want back in here. This is some of the best developed territory outside of or outside of the five starting countries, or five OGs if you want to call them that. But we eventually see Germany is split into two, and their nation is rapidly getting closed in on. But we see things start to finally go their way, as due to a major failure from the Germans, which is actually really more considered the Dutch, this major group of people becomes stranded. And they're like, okay, so we'll just expand out on our own. We're not going to follow no Dutch orders. And eventually, this idea starts spreading up into these guys, and more people start like, okay, yeah, we don't want to be the part of Germany, but we also don't want to be a part of the Dutch. So what we're gonna do is form our own nation, which is gonna be maybe a light blue color. See how this looks. If not, I do have a different plan. Alright, alright. Yeah, we'll do this light blue. Should. we'll do a light. We'll do a really light purple. Sorry I'm taking so much time on this, but alright. So now we have Germany and the Dutch rebellions. And these guys start spreading down into here. Switzerland will also kind of help these guys out. They're on their side. And also with Switzerland, they already know what they're going to do in the peace treaty, so they're going to make a little buying from Italy so they can take that over. Finally, I just wanted to get rid of that exclave. I do have a plan for it though. So we see, but eventually we see the German revolt, or the German revolts eventually take over the capital of the other Germany, and we see this country begins to finally fall. This final last bit will go over to Kaliningrad, and we'll take a look at what a peace treaty will look like. Alright, guys, so here we have the peace treaty. We'll start off, this pink country, or the New Germany, I should say. They get that. Actually, that one pixel goes up to Denmark. So let's give Denmark their land. Uh, really, they just get, not that, they don't get that. Um, they get pretty much only just all of the islands that they conquered, and then some of the land down here. The Dutch team, well, they get their independence, and then that little bit of land there. Switzerland will be getting all of this, getting some lands they never even had in the first place. It's, and it's kind of clear they're looking to expand even more. Alright, up here, we see Kaliningrad getting this. And then for the slime team, well, the borders are going to get a little weird looking. So they get all of this. They pretty much just got the land that they used to own out here. And then they said, we want more, we want more. And since they're part of the Diamond Team, which is really the true winners of this war, they got more. And then, as for the rest of it, it'll all go over to Germany, or as I will now call them, Poland. So we've got these Poland, this is Poland, even though it's not really in Poland, which is more here. And then we've got Germany. I, I could do West and East Germany, but no. So, clearly, somebody has just suffered a very, very large defeat. Germany was probably once one of the best countries to be in, and then suddenly a little bit of instability, and boom. I think this was the Dutch capital. Hold on. Right there. Yeah, alright. Just had to make sure I put their capital right back where it was. Alright, so now we've gotten all of this nonsense happening. Let's see what happens with the alliances. So, whoops. You guys can get your, alright, you guys can keep your capitals. But, these guys are pretty much kicked from the Cross Alliance. But so is, Denmark, as they invaded their own ally. And both of these guys are gonna try and seek refuge. Who do they go to? Well, we see, not just Germany, but we see Germany, but we also see, or we see Poland, Germany, and the Dutch team all join up with the Diamond Alliance, which is Switzerland's alliance, if you didn't know. um, but as for Denmark, well, they're gonna decide that they want to pursue neutrality, so they're gonna test out the Iceland. However, they have lands that are maybe a bit more valuable. All right, let's move to Russia. Well, Russia is they're actually more stable now. They're actually better stability than the Great Empire now that this has been released. And yes, these guys don't have a capital because they keep blowing up every one of their cities, and it's not really sure where they're gonna put their capital at. They probably have it in some remote city way up in one of these islands, but alright, Russia. They're looking to expand. You can't go into Kaliningrad because they're part of the Diamond Alliance. You can't go into Sweden, Diamond Alliance. Finland, I mean, you could go into Finland. That's not gonna end well, though. No point in going into Siberia. They've nuked haven't nuked, there's no nukes. Um, but there's no point in here because they've destroyed every one of the cities. Again, don't want to go into your ally. Don't want to activate the cross alliance for sure, especially against the Great Empire. So these guys are stronger than you and right next to your capital. So that automatically leaves one person left, which is Estonia. And that's actually perfect for Russia, who's looking to get some actual good access to open ocean waters. So they will quickly move in to Estonia and really just take over the whole thing instantly. See that right here, which also means that this goes bye-bye, and we've even lost another member in the Mercedes Economic Alliance. Which I can also just move this over. Alright, okay, there we go. Now we're gonna come a bit further south. A bit further than that, actually. These three right here, or really more just these four, were all part of. Actually, these guys were part of Catalonia. But these three were part of West France's colonial empire. But these four all really, I mean, they don't really get along. We'll say. We'll put it at that. These guys are like, well, we're part of this empire, or we should get some land from it. It's like collapsed and stuff. And then Tanzania's like, well, yeah, then we should have gotten some of your land because we even took it over. So, I mean, these two here are at each other's throats right now. And then the orange team's like, well, if you should have gotten land, we should have gotten land. And these guys end up saying, like, oh, we should have like this land here because like allies and stuff. And countries keep arguing about everything, and their tensions strain further and further. But we'll move away from that. And now we come over into Europe. As if, I mean, unless you didn't watch the last episode, as you should know, the capital of North Korea, or kind of North Korean country, this country hosted the peace treaty for World War II, but now they're kind of like, well, Korea wants their land back. We'll put it at that. So they're going to go in to this country and quickly just blitz through it, and they're going to take all of their land back. This isn't the only time they'll do this, though, as they're also going to go knocking through Japan. However, this is going to be a bit harder, and eventually, just as they're about to get to the capital, this will start to slow down. So they're going to say, "Hey, allies, join us." And most of the countries will join with them. However, a few countries in the Square Alliance will not send aid of. Those are Sumatra, Vietnam, and um, and Southern Siberia. Yeah, I guess you can call them that. It's TLT. Or maybe Amur. Isn't that this area is called? But these all of those countries I said don't send their aid. But otherwise, it's still enough. And you've got three top 20 powers anyway, which are the ones that send aid. Or these two are top 20. These guys are top 5 even. So we also see this same thing happens with Japan, as did with Korea, these Koreans. And then, well, Vietnam, they can pose some help. Same with Sumatra, especially with Sumatra, as like I mean, they give the Square Alliance access to the Indian Ocean. Myanmar and Thailand, they don't really want to join this because like they're not fans of Vietnam because they were like South Chinese and stuff. But the Siberians, what really do they offer? Or the Amurians, I should say. What really do they offer? Well, that's exactly what Korea thinks. What do they offer? Other than a bit of extra help, which the Koreans now think, well, they're not even going to give us their help anyway. So Korea's going to kick them out of the Square Alliance, and will tell China that prepare your military. Is what they're going to say. And Korea is just going to conquest. And where do they start this conquest? Well, they start it right here in the Yellow. China will also send some forces up into this area, especially because they used to own this land. But soon after, Korea will also be sending its forces up and into the Siberian, or the Amur nation. And quite quickly, they're able to capture the capital. Now, we move on to the final event of this episode, which is also probably the biggest, as tensions are continuing to strain between the Circle and Diamond alliances. Russia is trying to convince Leningrad and Sweden to join the Circles, whereas Switzerland is trying to convince the Iberian and Italian nations to join the Diamonds, and it's more really not much of a it, they're not really fighting over it, but what they're really just fighting over influence. These guys, or Switzerland, well, mainly they just want coastal access. They want they want to actually be able to trade with people outside of their border nations, because for whatever reason these countries still haven't got to fixing trade routes. Not like anyone cares about that, but the tensions are going to severely escalate, and all we pretty much just got done with World War II. It's been about 2 years since World War II ended, and well, This could be maybe the second major conflict because there was this over here, and then there was also the German stuff. But that will do it for today's episode of What If Civilization Started Over. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.